Hello, hello, hello. This is Chapter 1, Skill 7, Perpendicular Lines, or you could also think of it perpendicular equations. That's the challenging part. What's the equation of these lines? Okay. So looking at the first question, again, you can write this out. This isn't homework, so this is just some extra work. If we see these words, our first step is what's the slope, then what's the vocab, and see if I have to do something next, okay? Those are always my steps. So it says write the perpendicular slope to a line passing through these points. So to do this question, I don't know the slope. I'm going to have to use my slope formula. y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. So I take my y values, 8 and 1, and I subtract them. My x values, 1 and 3, and subtract them. Now I simplify this, so 8 minus 1 is 7, and 1 minus 3 is negative 2. Now I notice that if 1 is positive and 1 is negative, that just means that the fraction is negative. So this is our slope. We found the slope. Now looking for the vocab word, I'm looking for this perpendicular. And that actually means opposite reciprocal. The slope of a perpendicular line is the opposite reciprocal. And we reviewed today that that means flip the sign and flip it upside down. Okay, I'm not going to write that down, but flip the sign and flip it upside down. That's what these two terms mean. So I got to do that. So my perpendicular slope would be positive 2 over 7. Now, there's no real next step. They didn't ask me to write a new equation, anything like that, just what would be a perpendicular line to that. So that's all I have to do there. Yay. Okay. Next question, it says, write in a perpendicular slope, so I just need the slope like this one, through these lines. So this one's just like that one. So you could pause this and try this yourself and then see how you did. And using this one as kind of a guide. So let's go ahead, same steps. What's the slope? What's the vocab? What's the next step? Slope is y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. Take my x coordinates, subtract them. Take my y coordinates, subtract them. Okay, so same thing, I end up getting, if one of them is negative, whether it's the positive one or whether it's the numerator or denominator, the fraction is negative and that's my slope. My vocab word said perpendicular, which does not mean same slope. It actually means opposite reciprocal, which means flip and then flip upside down. So instead of negative, my perpendicular would be positive, so I can put a positive sign there or leave it blank. That's totally fine too. And instead of the 12 being on the bottom, it's on the top. Now I would probably rewrite that, so my next step would just be to rewrite it. They didn't ask me to write any new equations or anything, just the slope of a line that's perpendicular. So the perpendicular slope here would just be positive 12. That is the opposite reciprocal. One's positive, one's negative. Good job. Now, let's take it to the next level. It says put in point slope form. So we are going to take that to the next step. Still my thing, steps are slope, vocab, and ask yourself anything needing to come next in the directions. So my slope here, I don't know. When I see this formula, I'm not sure what the slope is. So I'm just going to recopy it. I don't know the slope unless y is by himself on one side. And I really don't like it if y is negative. So I'm going to add 3y to both sides and rewrite the question. Okay, that looks a little better to me. Now I'm going to subtract 12 on both sides. 12 doesn't line up with the 2x because those terms are not alike. So I'm going to go ahead and recopy this. And that pesky number 3 is still keeping y from being by himself on one side. So I'm going to divide and do any canceling that I might need to do. So I have 3 divided by 3 is 1. 12 divided by 3 is actually 4. 2 divided by 3 is just a fraction. So I'm going to write this 2/3 x right? 2/3 x minus 4, because 12 divided by 3 is 4, equals y. Now I know my slope. I'm still doing step 1, slope. My slope is the number in front of the x. Ta-da! Slope is 2/3. Now I got to check in with my vocab. The vocab says perpendicular, which means opposite reciprocal, which tells you to flip and then flip upside down. Okay, so back we are on problem 3. The perpendicular slope would be -3/2 because one's positive, one's negative, and I flipped it upside down. Awesome. Now I'm ready to do, I have my point, I have my slope. I got to make sure I pick this one and not that one. Now I have to use the point slope form. That's y minus y1 slope, x minus x1. So I have my point. My point is -8, 6. So my y value is 6. So I do y minus 6. My slope is -3/2. And then I do x minus my x coordinate, -8. Now I'd like to leave my answer like that, but you got to clean this up. When I do minus a negative, you got to rewrite it plus. So let me rewrite it and box out my answer. Cool. Awesome. There it is. Now let's try another one. Again, feel free to freeze it and do it yourself and check your work. Same thing. I have to find out the slope, then work on my vocab, then figure out if they're asking any next steps. Okay, so we got 3x minus 2y is 10. I don't know the slope because y is not by himself on one side. And I hate it when y is negative. So I'm going to make y positive and rewrite the question. Now y is positive. But that 10 is getting in the way, so I'm going to subtract both sides by 10 and rewrite the question. Now the 2 is in the way there, so I'm going to divide each term by 2 and cancel if possible. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 10 divided by 2 is 5. And 3/2 is still just 3/2. So we have 3/2 x minus 5 equals y. Now we can find the slope. So the slope is just, if y is by himself on one side, is merely the number in front of the x. So I found my slope, and I'm ready to move on to my vocab. So in the problem, my vocab word is perpendicular, which we know means go ahead, flip and flip it upside down. Okay, now I have a slope, and I can't use that one. I got to use this one. I have a point, so I can do the next step, which is point slope form. Y minus the y value, slope, x minus the x value. My y value is 5, my slope 2/3, my x value was a -7. No, hold on, I can't leave my answer like that. Now we're talking. Ta-da. Okay. I'm almost done. I'm probably good enough. I don't have to work these out. If you want, I'm not going to explain these, but I'll go ahead and post the answers just for some extra help. Here, if you rewrote this equation, slope is 4, perpendicular slope would be -1/4. That's the slope we'd plug in to our point slope formula. Y minus the y coordinate, slope, x minus the x coordinate. Rewrite your answer. Okay, last one. Again, I'll go real fast. I won't even explain it, but I will show my work so you can double check your answer. subtract the y values, subtract the x values, clean it up. The word says perpendicular slope, so that'd be positive 5/3. All they want is the slope. So that's my final answer. Thanks for joining us.